Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Mayor's Town Hall on Public Safety. I'd like to take a moment to ask you all to stand in joining me in welcoming Miss Central California, Stephanie Ann Mary, singing our national anthem.
Hold on, technical difficulties. There we go. Maybe. There we go. Thank you.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight. Oh, the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave? Oh, the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Thank you, Stephanie. That was absolutely beautiful. I'd like to take a moment to introduce you to a few people that are in the audience today before we get started. This will give you an opportunity also to familiarize yourself with who to ask questions to after we're done. First, I'd like to introduce you to our town manager, Joe Calabrigo. I'd like to introduce you to the gentleman that gets me my water and my scarves. No, that's an Elvis thing, never mind. This is actually somebody that does a lot of this information for us out here is Nat Rajanasathera. We also have Diane Friedman in the audience.
Hey.
Kevin Gillette behind the camera, and also our media outreach gentleman. You've probably read a lot of his articles on Next Door. Gianna Baragna, she's in the very back. And Andy Overmore, I think he is in the back, but he does all the setup. All the times you guys see the background things going on, he's that gentleman that does all of our setup for us. And with that, I'd also like to introduce you some of the VIPs that are here in the audience today. I have the president of the San Ramon Valley Unified School District, Mark Jewett. Vice President School District, I've got Vice President Ken Mintz. And also Candace Anderson's office is being represented today by Jen Pollack. I have San Ramon Valley Fire Protection District Board member, Matt Stamey. And Senator Glazier could not be here today, but he always sends out his trusty person to be here with us, is Judy Lloyd. And last but not least, I'd like to introduce you to my fellow council member, Lisa Blackwell. It is always important to talk about public safety, and the reason why we brought the panel here together is to be able to talk to that subject to you today. So at this time, I'd like to introduce you to our panel. I'd like to introduce you to our Contra Costa County Sheriff, Sheriff David Livingston. From the Danville Police Department, we have Chief Steve Simpkins. And from our fire district, we have Chief Paige Meyer. Danville also has an emergency preparedness manager, and Jeff Hebel could not be here today, but he sends his well wishes, and he also gave me some information to share with you today as well. He is watching his daughter graduate from college today in Chico. So, public safety. Why do we have this specific panel? And why do we have all these people standing around us today? And what do you think of when you hear the word public safety? Providing public safety is ultimately the responsibility of municipal government. Public safety does not mean just addressing crime and violence. It affects us and residents every single day. It is also about delivering fast, life-saving necessities, and it is also about preparing for fires, also preventing fires, and it's also about responding to our natural disasters. These are the four facets of our safety toolbox. We reach for them when we have an emergency situation. Danville Police, San Ramon Fire, the Sheriff's Office, and of course, our own town of Danville. Danville encompasses about 8.1 square miles. We spend about 29.3% of our budget, which equates to about $9.6 million on police. So if you look at this map right here, you'll notice that Danville's in the center. If you live in Blackhawk or the other surrounding areas, you are covered by the Sheriff's Office. If you live in Danville, we have our own police department, and the gentleman in blue that you see also in the back. Contra Costa County is in the Sheriff's Department. Then we have Las Trampas regional areas that is covered by the East Bay Regional Parks Police, and then obviously we have the Sheriff and Danville Police. The fire is set up a little bit different in that it encompasses a broader area. It extends outside our borders. Fire protection and our EMS services are provided by the San Ramon Valley Fire, serving Danville, Alamo, Blackhawk, and the entire San Ramon area, including all the way out to Morgan Territory Road. No, I'm not related, but yes, Morgan Territory Road. We operate 2 fire stations in Danville, but that doesn't mean that we only have access to 2. It means that we also have a mutual agreement that in a sense of an emergency, we can call on the surrounding areas as well for help. And I'll let Chief Meyer kind of go into the fire end of things when he has an opportunity to speak. Another thing that's under our umbrella is emergency services for the town of Danville. This picture might look familiar to some of you, or you might have seen it in the news, and this is about our storms. I'd like to tell you a little bit about that. In a matter of 2 months, we received enough rain to last us the entire annual rainfall norm that we get in Danville. So equate that into what you see there, and you'll realize that there's going to be some type of property damage. We ended up getting about $450,000 in property damage and repairs that needed to be done in Danville. And we are also reaching out, thanks to our staff as well as Jeff Hebel, to get reimbursement from this from FEMA and Cal OES. And the Danville town staff, you'll see them around all the time. They are continuously looking and making sure that our community stays safe. It's also important to note that when something like this happens, when you look at your town compared to the areas that are surrounding us, you realize how prepared Danville is, because the downtime in Danville was minimum. And speaking of partnerships, we conduct an active shooter drill. Why active shooter drills? Well, it's important for our departments to work together to maintain our schools and the safety on our campuses. We also maintain a close relationship, and that's why we have a lot of our school board members here today, that with the school districts to maintain an emergency preparedness for them as well as an emergency plan for them in case something does happen. This collaboration is important to not only us as residents, but for our youth as well. And speaking of youth, having all of you here today and having the opportunity to meet with these individuals that are key respondents in an emergency is so important to all of you. It's having you here today that strengthens our community and our commitment to public safety. This results in an informed community. It also results in an inclusive community. Just as important is preparing our youth and maintaining youth programs for our children. We contribute to a program called Street Smarts and Start Smart. Some of you have probably been in those programs with your children before or have heard of those programs. I know that they've come around long after my 29-year-old daughter went through school, but now I know my 14-year-old will be able to enjoy these programs. What they do is they give us the opportunity to teach our children about bike safety, being on the streets, safety in general. It also teaches our new to 15 to 19-year-old drivers how to be street smart in the sense of driving on our streets. This is what you see here is actually a bike rodeo that we put on at our local elementary schools. One thing that we understand as a council is that public safety equals public trust. And we want you to know that our #1 priority in Danville is public safety. When you look around this room, you're going to see a lot of gentlemen and women wearing the uniform. They're here for us today to protect us and to give us information about how we, as Danville residents, are supported by our emergency services. When you also look around this room and also outside of these doors, you're going to notice there's tables set up. I would encourage you, after we're done, they'll be remaining here afterwards, to visit each one of the tables. They'll have valuable information for you to take a look at, as well as emergency information in case we do have an inevitable emergency. So without further ado, I'd like to take a moment to introduce you and tell you a little bit about our sheriff, Sheriff David Livingston. Sheriff David Livingston was elected as the 22nd Sheriff of Contra, Costa County in 2010. He started his career as a police officer in the city of Fremont, where he later rose to the rank of captain. He served as police chief of the city of Pleasant Hill for 3 years before being selected as Concord's police chief in 2005. He served as Concord's police chief for 5 years. He has served on the California Police Chiefs Association Board of Directors. Sheriff Livingston earned a bachelor's degree with honors from UC Santa Barbara and later earned his law degree from the University of San Francisco School of Law. He is a graduate of the FBI National Academy and the FBI National Executive Institute and the California Command College. Sheriff Livingston is also a proud member of Danville and also lives in Danville. Welcome, Sheriff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can everyone hear me in the back there? Well, it's an honor to be here. The commute was short, maybe about 4 minutes or so to come over. I do want to introduce also my wife Agnes, who is here to cheer me on. So, and I have to say that all of us Danville residents have some fantastic leadership, not only in Mayor Morgan, but also in Town Manager Joe Calabrigo, who is here, the entire City Council. We have a first-rate City Council, or Town Council, I should say. And Mark Jewett, President of the school board, he and I were in school at the same time. He was down at UC San Diego, and I was at UC Santa Barbara, and we had mutual friends, and we would carpool, and I won't say anything more than that, but we would get together and have a good time. So I'm going to take just a few minutes, if I might, to share with you what the Sheriff's Office really does. How do we serve you? You have your own police department in the Danville Police, but I find that a lot of folks don't understand what the county sheriff does. So we're the largest law enforcement agency in the county. We have over 670 sworn deputy sheriffs and about another 365 civilian personnel staff. We're responsible for policing about 500 square miles of this county, including 200 miles of coastline and inland waterways. We have 3 detention facilities. One of the responsibilities of any sheriff in the county, or any county in California, is detention. We have a jail in Martinez, one in Marsh Creek out by Clayton, and then also one in Richmond in West County. We are serving a population, I think you may know this, of about 1.1 million people in Contra Costa County. We're the 3rd largest county in the Bay Area. We're the 9th largest in California. There are 58 counties in the state of California. The Constitution requires that every county have an elected district attorney and an elected sheriff. So my responsibility is directly to you, the people, wherever you may live throughout the county. And I also like to note that we're the 37th largest county in the nation, which may not sound like much, but there's over 3,000 counties across the U.S., so we're in the top 1% by population here. There's a lot going on. As far as the office itself, we have about 25 different physical locations throughout the county, all the way out to the Delta Station, Discovery Bay, and out to our West County detention facility. And our total budget is just over $200 million. About a third of that is paid for by what's called Prop 172 half-cent sales tax. So that's been going on for about a decade and a half. Another third is through grant revenue, and then the last third is actually general fund from the county. So we like to say we're giving you a good bang for the buck, because a lot of the revenue comes directly to us, not taking from county funds to fund the operation of the sheriff. There's 3 bureaus: custody services, field operations, and support services. Let's talk about custody. When I was a police chief in Contra, I didn't know much about how jails operate. Now I'm responsible for 2,000 inmates on any given day, which includes all of their mental health, their medical care, education, training, food service, movement of them to court appointments and back to the county jail. And we have 3, as I mentioned, Richmond, Martinez, and out in Clayton. And you may have seen some news recently about a new facility that we're going to be putting in West County, in Richmond. That'll be about 400 beds, and the focus of that facility is to address the growing problem that every sheriff is facing, which is having mental health needs going unmet in custody. Many of our offenders obviously need mental health services. So the idea of this facility, paid for by the state, it was a competitive grant process, will be to have intensive mental health services for these folks, and that should be online in about 3 years. So we're very excited about that. We also provide through that bureau all the court security. So if any of you have had occasion to visit any courthouse in Contra Costa, that security, both at the door and at the bailiffs in the courtrooms, is provided by Contra Costa County Sheriff's Office. So we have another division called employee development, essentially, which means we have a full training unit. We run a police academy out in Pittsburgh. Many agencies throughout the county send their people to our training facility where they learn the basic skills of law enforcement. We also have our recruiting unit there. We're always recruiting for qualified, both professional, non-sworn staff and deputy sheriff staff. So if you know someone who might be interested, please have them call us. We're in a continuous hiring mode. We're always looking for good people. Now in custody, we also have custody alternative, which I think is important to note. And that is that for the 60% or so percentage of people in custody now, they're awaiting trial on a serious case. If it's a lower level case, then we can put them into what's called custody alternative. So they're out of the facility, typically with ankle monitoring, and therefore costing the taxpayers a lot less money while their criminal case is pending. So we're very aggressive about trying to safely release people who we think meet our criteria and who will not reoffend while their matter is pending. So that's called custody alternative. It's something that we've been doing a long time here in the county with pretty great success. So the Field Operations Bureau is basically our patrol operation, and that's a large one. We have patrol, we have investigations just like any police department would, and we have our patrols divided into 4 major areas for those of you who are interested. Our base station out in Richmond, Delta Station, as I mentioned earlier, out in Discovery Bay, Meyer Station, which handles everything kind of in the central corridor, and then Valley Station, which is presently in a storefront here in Alamo that provides patrol policing all over the greater Alamo area. A couple more points I want to make and then I'll wrap up. We do provide contracts for law enforcement services to cities and towns that want us to come in and provide the service under the direction of the city council and of the city manager. That includes Danville, Orinda, and Lafayette. So those are sheriff's employees, but they answer to, not to me necessarily as a sheriff, but to the priorities that the town council, the mayor, and the city manager or town manager set. We also have specialized patrols. Diablo, for example, taxes themselves additional funds so they can have additional deputy patrol. The same with Blackhawk, Alamo, Round Hill, and then Contra Costa Center up in Walnut Creek pays for an additional deputy. And then there's a number of smaller contracts that we won't get into that we provide a lot of service to. In addition, we provide a full tactical team, otherwise known as a SWAT team, available throughout the county. We have a hostage negotiation team that's quite active. We have a large Marine Patrol unit. These are deputies specially trained for the issues that occur on the water, and as we're ramping up now for the summer, it will be very busy on the Delta, which is our primary patrol areas. And so we try and do education as well as enforcement to keep our waterways safe. And we have a helicopter unit, and from time to time on major cases you may hear our helicopter overhead, and we're trying to assist local agencies with their needs. We have a full investigations unit which handles everything from the typical crimes you would expect, thefts, sexual assaults, etc. And they handle those primarily in the unincorporated areas, so that's what our detectives are doing. My title is actually Sheriff Coroner legally, so I am also the county's coroner. We have a large coroner's division where we have hired doctors to come in and do pathological examinations. We do about 3,000 investigations each year. Again, a very large operation. It's part of our coroner's function. Lastly, we have a full crime lab, and we provide services to all the agencies in the county, including DNA work, fingerprint work, recovery of expended shells from firearms. All of those things go to our crime lab up in Martinez, and we're nationally recognized and certified as an excellent lab run by some very professional people. So it's they do a lot of work, but anything forensically that's going to come in is not handled typically by the local agency. It's sent to us at the sheriff's office. And we also have a large property unit that stores all the evidence that comes in. Lastly, our dispatch center answers a lot of calls for service in Martinez. We contract with some cities that you already heard. We also have other cities that contract with us just for dispatch, Pittsburgh, for example, and they handled 433,000 calls into the dispatch center last year. Our deputies responded to 168,000 of those calls. We did something a few years ago that was important to me. We took out the middleman on cell phone calls, so that if you make a cell phone call and you're within an area of a tower that is reportable to us, it comes directly into our dispatch. A few years ago, we go to CHP first and then get routed over to us. This makes it much faster for our emergency response. We also have a companion emergency operations center. In fact, we're building a new state-of-the-art building to protect all of you and to stand it up in an emergency, and we'll have that online in just about 2 years. And we work very closely with all the cities and towns to make sure that we're as prepared as we possibly can be for whatever might come our way. Typically, of course, we focus on things like earthquakes and floods, but we're prepared for really anything. Finally, I wanted you to know that a deputy sheriff, and many are standing in the back, and I honor all of you for your service. Becoming a deputy sheriff is no easy task, and let me just take 1 minute to walk you through it. First, you have to apply. You have to be over 21. You apply, and then that application is screened to make sure that you're eligible. Then you take a written test, which you have to pass. Then you're moved on to an oral examination with a panel, which you have to pass. You're also rated in that. If they decide you should move forward, we start a full background on you, which is a packet of paper about this thick to see where you've worked, who your girlfriends or boyfriends have been, where your family has lived. We dig in pretty deep, drug use, all those things. And then once you fill that all out, we hook you up to a lie detector test. This mic seems to be cutting out a bit. And then assuming that you pass all of that, you have a medical exam. And if you pass that, then we send you on to a psychological exam. All of those are required to be passed. If you are selected, and we hire 1 or 2 out of every 100, then you are sent to our training academy to start your career as a deputy sheriff. And lastly, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Sheriff's Posse, which is a group of about 450 throughout the county who want to give back to the community. It's a philanthropic group that supports law enforcement. And of course, our mayor is a member of the Sheriff's Posse. And if you're interested, you can go to our website, just Google Sheriff's Posse. There's about 400 members. It's not a political organization. It's a great group of people who have fun events and support public safety. And thank you. It's my honor not only to be here as sheriff, but to be a resident of Danville. Thanks.
Next on our panel, we have our Danville Police Chief, Chief Steve Simpkins, and let me tell you a little about Steve. He's been in law enforcement for 24 years, starting in Sacramento County as a reserve deputy before coming to Contra, Costa County in 1994. Chief Simpkins has worked his way up the ranks, working patrol in the county, San Ramon Police as a patrol officer and detective, sergeant in patrol, and a detective sergeant in Orinda, as well as a lieutenant, serving as a facility commander for 2 larger county jails. His last assignment before serving as Danville's police chief was a watch commander for all operations of the sheriff's office during non-business hours. He has served as Danville's police chief since 2010 and holds the rank of captain in the sheriff's office. Steve has a master's degree in administrative leadership from the University of Oklahoma and completed the FBI National Academy in Quantico, Virginia. He is also a graduate and certified in criminal justice from the University of Virginia. Ladies and gentlemen, our police chief, Chief Simpkins.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Sheriff. And good morning, everybody, and thank you for coming down here on a beautiful Danville Saturday morning to hear about a topic that's so important. And in keeping with introducing our VIPs out there, I have a VIP in the back corner who's going to be a little shy at the moment, but my daughter Jenna's back there tagging along with Dad for this. We all have our VIPs, and that's one to me. And also, I noticed the scouts that are out there. I have a feeling, based on my sons being in scouts, that you might be here trying to do your Citizenship of the Nation merit badge. And so, if you have any questions that we didn't answer or anything else, we're all happy to hang out and answer those questions so you get your merit badge. So, I am the lucky one who gets to be in charge of public safety from a crime and traffic perspective for the town of Danville. I've been here since July of 2010, as the mayor mentioned, and it's been a very exciting, wonderful, rewarding 7 years. And I'd like to give you a summary of some of the things that we've been doing over the last couple of years, and also address perhaps things that you might be seeing in the news, because those are some important questions that we can address. Over the last few years, you may have noticed, felt, or seen, or perceived an increase in crime. And that's something that I would like to address to make sure that you get it straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak. In 2014 and 2015, we did definitely have an increase in crime. But I'd like to give you some perspective on that. In 2013, we had our all-time low in crime. So when the town incorporated in 1982 and selected the Sheriff's Office for police services, that's when our records started. And in that time, between 1982 and 2013, I'm going to give you some numbers to give you some perspective here. The lowest number of property crimes that we ever had occur up until 2013 was 411 property crimes, and that occurred in 2013. The previous high was 18 years before that, and that was in 1995, and that was 806. And so by my rudimentary math skills, that's about a 50% decrease in crime over that 18 years. So you might think, because I think some of you might think, gee, I wish Danville was the way it used to be. I actually want to change that because the crime was twice as bad. So let's be happy about now. So in 2013 was our previous low. Now in 2014 and 2015 we did have increases. In 2014 we had a 10% increase. In 2015 we had another 10% increase. So that's back to back. The difference for me, my theory here is, despite the fact that there was a crime increase, what we didn't have in 1995, when crime was at its worst, was we didn't have Facebook, Nextdoor, Twitter, and the speed of information to which information travels throughout the neighborhoods. And so now, when you have something happen in your neighborhood, it feels like a lot more as opposed to what the numbers really are. So I wanted to make sure everybody had the real numbers. Now, yes, the crime went up. But guess what we did in 2016, and I'm very happy to sit here and report. 2016, remember I said our all-time low used to be 411 in 2013. We dropped it to 365 in 2016 for a new all-time low. Delighted to bring that information to you. And you might ask, well, Chief, how did that happen? And that's where I want to take the next couple of minutes and explain. There was a couple of different directions that we took. And they were in crime fighting strategies and then in customer outreach, community outreach. Those were our two most important areas. What we did from a crime fighting perspective is we significantly increased our volunteer program. And I'd like to take a moment to point out there's two of them in the back. We have Mark Walker, if you can wave back there, Mark. And on the other side, since they can't stand together apparently, is These two fine folks are part of a cadre that we have that's roughly 36 people, and the white shirts signify to you that they're volunteers. These are Danville residents who are volunteering their time to make sure that public safety is a priority and that we're able to expand our police services as opposed to just having sworn officers, because sworn officers are a little bit more expensive than volunteers. And we like to be able to provide the most service that we can. And those volunteers are out in your neighborhoods. They're doing vacation house checks while you're on vacation. They're looking for signs of burglary. We have a program called If I Was a Thief, and they look for opportunities that thieves might take and help you to reduce that from happening. I've got another volunteer who's hiding over there, Barbara. She's not in her uniform, but Barbara has been a volunteer with us for 17 years. Yes, and as the mayor reminded me, she is a graduate of the program also. Unfortunately, she's too busy to volunteer her time with us anymore. Otherwise, we might rope her into some of these duties and stick her in a patrol car again. But having an increase of those patrols happen and the people out in the neighborhoods has been important. We've also shifted a couple of officers into what I would title a crime suppression function, to where they are not being detectives, they're not responding to emergency calls per se. They are working as a team together. We call it a problem-oriented policing team. The problem I gave them was property crime, make it go away. And they've been very, very successful at that. They've been, doing enforcement, arrests, looking at people who are on probation and parole, why are you here? Strategies that we can do that aren't necessarily tied up with officers investigating cases or responding to 911 calls. The other thing that we did we did stand up in November of 2016, so it's a little late to give it true credit, but as part of our crime fighting efforts is we installed a license plate recognition camera program system all around town. In essence, there are 13 positions around Danville to which we have a license plate recognition camera and also a situational awareness camera. And to give you an idea of how those work, when recently we had a violent crime occur, we had a stabbing occur, and the victim was only able to tell us the type of vehicle. They said that it was a white Charger. And while that's a good lead for us to follow, and certainly our detectives can work on that, we went back to our camera system at the time that this crime occurred, looked within that window, and sure enough, here goes a white Charger drive by with a license plate on it. And we had the suspect in custody for a violent felony within an hour and a half because of that license plate and because of our camera system. And it's a very helpful those are examples that really make it was a wise expenditure on the council's behalf, and we're very happy to have that system up and running. And I have a number of other anecdotal stories I can share, but the bottom line is that system's working very well, and it's helping us keep the bad guys out of town that shouldn't be here in the first place. On the customer outreach side, because we also think it's very important, as the mayor mentioned, our number one thing is to make sure we have trust with the community, because we want you to trust us and to call us when you feel something's out of place and you want police services and you want us to check it out for you. We need that trust. There's only so many police officers, but there's 43,000 residents, and that's a lot more eyeballs looking at what's going on than my police department can offer. And so to build that trust, we've done a number of things throughout 2016 and 2017. One of them was to do a service called Coffee with the Cops, and we got to meet with people in places that didn't involve a 911 call or a ticket, because those aren't great times to meet people. And we want to be able to build that rapport and that trust with you in an environment to where there isn't the exigent circumstances that follow with 911 calls and other things like that. That was very helpful. We got to go out into the communities, talk to people. We went to about every HOA function that we could find. We went to every service group that existed. If there was a group of 2 people, we went and talked to them and explained what we were doing. We tried to get that going in over 2016 and 2017, those numerous meetings that we intended to. I must have given out more business cards than Robert Storer did, which that, by the way, is a feat in itself. And hopefully he hears that comment someday. But it was important for us to get out into the community, but also we didn't want to avoid the youth in our community. The youth is our future, very important. So we started a program called Recess with the Cops, because coffee with the kids, that didn't sound like it was a good idea. So we did recess with the cops instead. And that's been a very beneficial program for us, to where we have gone out, very simple, no program, no format, no PowerPoint. We just hang out and play kickball or foursquare and get our hat handed to us by all the 6th graders. And it's been a very fun time, and it's a really enjoyable experience to meet with them. And what I found after that was we had our tree lighting, where we have most of Danville comes downtown to watch the tree get lit. And I really was amazed by how many kids drugged their parents over to us and said, hey, that's the guy that gave me a sticker, remember me? And it allowed us to have that type of conversation. I think having that bond and rapport with our community is so important, because what our message has been throughout this is that we want to police Danville the way Danville wants to be policed. And the only way for us to find that out is to meet with all of you to find out what we can do to better serve you. And the combination of having some proactive strategies with police work and to strengthen our bond with the community really has turned into a banner year of 2016. With that, I know we'll be around to take some questions, and if there's more things that we can dive into, I'm happy to discuss any of them. But the bottom line is we appreciate your support, and we're here to serve all of you. So thank you.
And last but not least, we have our fire chief, Chief Paige Meyer. Can you hear me? Chief Meyer joined the San Ramon Valley Fire Protection District on March 18th, 2013. He currently, can you hear me now? He currently serves as a board member for the East Bay Regional Communications System Authority and an honorary board member of the San Ramon Valley Chamber of Commerce. A board member and secretary for Leadership San Ramon Valley, is an active member of the Contra Costa County Executive Fire Chiefs as president from 2013 to 2015, as well as our current 2017 president. Prior to being hired by the San Ramon Valley Fire District, Chief Myers began his career 25 years ago as a volunteer firefighter and later as a public safety officer with the city of Sunnyvale. He has served 16 years at the Vallejo Fire Department, holding the positions of firefighter, engineer, captain, battalion chief, and fire chief. He holds a Bachelor of Arts degree of Public Administration from Cal State University of Chico, as well as a fire science degree. And Chief Meyer, I understand you're also a proud Danville resident as well.
Kind of.
So ladies and gentlemen, Chief Meyer.
Let me start by just saying it's an honor to be up here with two great leaders in our community. Also, Mayor Morgan, appreciate your leadership, and Joe Calabrigo as well. The town of Danville is exceptional, so we're proud to serve this community. And like I said, it's an honor to be up here. We're in the fire service a little bit more complex than the police department. What we do is when there's a fire, we put water on it. With that, I'll take any questions. Can't help it, these guys are good, hard act to follow. And then I just add, one of the things on anytime you're doing a introduction or a bio, Steve Simpkins is a heck of a dancer. So at the end, you need to see any videos. Go see his daughter. I know she knows about the videos. She can share them. Okay, so let me start by just hitting a couple points. I think I joke about the water fire thing, but that is pretty much what we do, and when we deal with fires. But I'm going to hit a couple other points I think that are of interest to the community. And let's start with finance. I know you have all heard the term unfunded liability somewhere in your lives, I'm sure. So I'm here to tell you that currently we are in fantastic shape from a financial perspective. We actually have had a surplus, a budget surplus, the past several years that we put to good use. We are paying more on our unfunded liabilities than is required, which I believe in the state of California, let alone the United States, isn't being done in many other places, if at all. So this is the only district that's doing that with the great leadership of our fire board. So we are paying those down, and we actually have a capital improvement plan for the first time in the last several years where we we put money away because we didn't just deal with our pension unfunded liabilities. We looked at our facilities, our fleet, we looked at everything. You're self-sustainable. So we looked at those. We started a CIP, a capital improvement plan, and that allows us to put money away every year, and then we don't have to tap into our general fund to buy apparatus, fix roofs, anything like that. So from a financial perspective, you need to know that we're strong, we're positioned for the future, and we're also positioned for any downturns we can sustain. So we've positioned ourselves well there. The next part is our training division. One of the things that we have to do is be prepared. And we have a training division that's second to none. We have firefighters that are fantastic. We do cutting edge training on a regular basis. What we like to do is we like to look at what saves lives when it comes to fires and emergencies, non-medical, first of all, and we take a look at what we can do and how we can train our folks. And what we end up doing is we have programs that deal with their safety as well as the safety of our citizens. But we look at the NIOSH 5, we look at actual data. So one of the things we've done in the fire services, instead of being the traditionalists, we look at what's happening locally and nationally, and then we attack those issues through training. So I'm proud of that. We also have, you also in this community have a fully staffed hazardous materials team and rescue team. So if anything happens from a hazardous materials incident to a rescue incident, we are self-sustainable. We don't have to ask for any help. We're on our way to help you ourselves. And then finally, one of the things that's close to my heart, when we look at data, and I'm sure it's similar for the police department, our firefighters are injured and killed in traffic accidents. That's the #1 cause. Heart attack's the #1 cause technically, but in the United States, that's the #1 cause of death here. So I like to look at the second leading one in that case, and it's really traffic accidents. And we've got large equipment going down the street, and they're going code 3 and going through lights sometimes. So we want to train our folks to protect them, but also to protect you, because some of those apparatuses are 3 tons. So you're dealing with big apparatus that can't stop. So we do that every year. That's something that I just as a fire chief need to have happen so that we know that our folks are trained and safe on the road. Another area I want to touch on is our fire prevention division. I don't know how many people have had to pull permits or had their businesses inspected, but what we've done is we've gone through a major reorganization of our fire prevention division. And the focus that and that's our business arm, and the focus that we really tried to do is we tried to say, okay, this is the one thing, the one area that we get the most complaints on, because you'd be surprised, when you're having an emergency, you're really happy to see us. It's just how it goes. But when we come to inspect you, not so happy. Not always excited to see us walk through the door, or you're going to do your residential remodel or whatever you may be dealing with, business or as a residence. And so what we thought is we had not a lot of complaints, but we had enough complaints and we had enough silos being created in that division to where we wanted to create flexibility like any business. So we wanted to tear down those silos and create a cross-training system so that we have all of our folks able to deal with most of your problems. And that means from the time you walk in the door at the front desk, we find that 95% of the people that walk into our headquarters have a simple question or a simple permit that needs to be handled, and they can get it handled efficiently and right away, as opposed to going into a queue and then you're waiting for weeks and weeks and weeks for the simple problems. So we'll be able to get those turned around quickly. And then also out in the field, we have a thought process previously that was very code specific. And what people don't realize about codes, specifically the fire code, is there is the idea of exceptions. So it doesn't have to be per the letter of the law. There's usually an exception based on what we need as a fire department. So we look at it from a safety fire response perspective. And when we take that look, it becomes very common sense. So when we're explaining to our business community, our residential citizens that are doing remodels, and we ask them to do things, it's not because this little piece of paper told me you have to do it. It's because it makes sense, and we take advantage of those exceptions. I think that's a huge deal for this community to understand. In 2 months of that reorganization, I can tell you, town council member, Newell Arnridge, came in and was amazed at just the difference that he saw when he walked in and got his problem solved immediately. So I think you're going to see that improvement. We just started it 2 months ago. You're going to feel it out there when and if you have to come in and use our prevention division. But remember this, it's rebranded too to the Fire and Life Safety Division. So a little bit about that. I know it's fascinating and riveting. You're all at the edge of your seat, but I think it's important for you guys to know that, because I think you may have to use it, and then that's when you care about it. And then one of the final areas I just want to touch on is our emergency medical division. One of the things you probably know is when we go to calls, we're dealing with emergency medical calls 80+% of the time. And within this district, within this fire district, we are not only your fire department, but we are also your ambulance company. So we actually take you from the time of call all the way to the facility that you need to go to, typically the emergency room. So it's important to us when we're dealing with emergency medical calls that we're the best, because you do that 80+% of the time, you better be darn good at it. So one of the things that we've done historically is we monitor our cardiac save rates. That means if you're having a heart attack, how often do we get you to an emergency room and you walk out? What's the percentage? Nationally, it hovers around 30%. And since over the past 3 to 4 years, we've been hovering around 50%. And we've hit as high as 80% in our save rates for a witnessed cardiac event, which is great. I mean, it tells me, number one, we're doing things right, and number two, if we put the best statistics out there, it puts us at number one or at least top 3. We usually kind of battle that out every year in the nation. So really important for you to know, and I think it's a testament to our firefighters and the work they do. But one of the things that we also understand is we need to do things that well and better. It's easy to kind of rest on your laurels, but we're not going to do that. And what we've started this last year is something that has not been done by any other fire department, fire district that I know of in the nation, is we use a third party, what we call continuous quality improvement review. And we use an independent third party, and they come in and they look at every one of our medical calls. And they don't take a sampling. They look at every single one of our medical calls, the patient care reports, what was done, and then they tell us what they see, what mistakes we've made, because we're not afraid of our mistakes, we're gonna make them. We just wanna know what they are so we can improve upon them. And that has been an invaluable tool and a source of data for us to be able to look at trends. Because as we look at trends, then we can fix problems both internally, but we can also see things that we may be able to do that are cutting edge to the whole industry. And that's really important for us, and we're really proud of that. And it makes a difference in decision making, which is what you care about, right? Patient outcomes. So that's what we're looking at. That third party CQI has been a valuable tool. And then I'll leave you with this with EMS, a couple little things. Not only cardiac, but what affects people, and when you think about it from a medical perspective, heart attack obviously is number one in the nation, and heart issues. But stroke is has a devastating effect on the patient. And the outcomes there are so important because the quality of life is huge. If we save somebody with a stroke, but they have deficits that change their lives, that's a big deal to us. So we're looking at stroke now, and we're looking at trauma on top of cardiac. And we're going to take the same look that we take at cardiac in those two areas, and we're going to utilize this data to figure out how we can improve upon the outcomes so we have less deficits, and also where we can utilize cutting edge medicine. There's a lot of things out there in the emergency medical world that we can tap into because we are your ambulance company. So we can do more than maybe a fire department that contracts out with an ambulance company. So I think that's important for you to know. We're very passionate about our EMS, and we're going to do the best job we can to attack all areas. So that's all I'll say about the EMS division. But finally, I'd like to just thank my crew. I don't know if they're in the room or they're out there, but you'll see we have hands-only CPR set up. What I like to say about saving lives is we do a great job. I mean, I am honored to work for these firefighters in the back. They do an amazing job in the field. They're seasoned. A lot of these folks, when you get your firefighters on scene, you'll have 50 to 70 years of experience sitting in front of you, paramedic, ALS, advanced life support experience. It's amazing. But they can only do what they can with a viable person. So if somebody goes down, it's very important that we have the ability to come in with a viable patient to get great outcomes. And that's why what you see out there is the hands-only CPR. So I urge you to stop by, learn hands-only CPR, because what you do when somebody goes down and you start just compressions, you keep that person's viability alive by minutes. And minutes are the difference between brain death and living and walking out of a situation. So I urge you as you go out, if, some of you told me you had CPR cards. Yeah, I heard you. But if you don't have a CPR card, stop by, because it's very simple and it's going to make the difference between life and death for those guys back there. It'll give them the best chance to make a save. So I appreciate the fact that our Fire and Life Safety Division is out here doing that, and I'll end with that. Thank you so much for paying attention. Like I said, riveting stuff. We appreciate it.
So we'd like to take a moment to ask your questions if you have questions of the panel up here, and I'll be happy to come around and bring the microphone to you unless you can speak really loud. You can do that as well.
I can speak really loud. One part of this is our community side of it and our own responsibility, especially earthquake, fire. Can somebody make comment about the CERT program? I went through that, and that's one way to increase awareness of what we can do on our own to lessen the burden on your resources in the case of a calamity.
I didn't plan it.
No, I took the program.
Yeah.
So if somebody can speak better to it than I
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Yeah, so one of the things that you guys have seen, that everybody's seen over the last several years, you have major earthquakes, disasters happen, and what happens a lot of times, and people don't understand, we have a great firefighting force, we have a great police department, and we're all going to come together and we're going to have a unified command and deal with all these emergencies together. But the reality of it is you have about 40 to 45 firefighters in this district, and when something big happens with only 40 to 45 people when I think we serve a population at the high times of over 200,000, 40 firefighters is not going to do a whole lot. We're going to be doing a whole lot of what we call windshield surveys and prioritization as to what is important. So to the gentleman's point, which I think is great, is we have a CERT program. So it's a community emergency response team. And we have training, we have a class that we put on 3 times a year, sometimes more, where you can go in, and what's important is that as a community, as a citizen, that you take care of yourself the first 48 to 72 hours. So that means that you have the proper amount of food, water, and you know what to do to take care of yourselves. That's number one. And then the CERT team also adds to it, and what we're trying to do is get pockets and communities and neighborhoods that work together so that then you can help your neighbor. You might have an elderly neighbor that needs help and has a gas leak, right? So you have the ability to go help your neighborhood. And so that's what this CERT program is. We have information out of the tables and sign-up sheets, so I would urge everybody, if you get a chance to do that, because as I said, we'll get to you, but you've seen these. And Katrina's an extreme, right? But it's not that extreme. We have a fault line running right through here. It's not that crazy to think that you'll be without help for 72 hours. So this is great training. It'll get you prepared. And again, outside we have information for you. I urge you to grab a pamphlet and sign up. Thank you for that, by the way.
Well, I've been a CERT member for 10 years. So go to your boardroom periodically to turn all the furniture upside down, get rescued. An opportunity to act like a spoiled kid. Anyway, I have a question for the Chief Simpkins. There was an incident that occurred yesterday, and you were talking about your LPR program, license plate recognition. Yesterday, I understand, they had covered up the license plate. So I have also heard that the pictures that you were able to obtain were significant resolution and to give you a lead on possibly. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Sure, a little bit. Thank you for the question. So you may have seen in the news yesterday, and then 10 days prior to that, on May 9th, we've had two different, what I would classify as a violent robbery at our Costco. And in both incidents, we had suspects go in and force open a display case and take some high-end merchandise out. In the first case, we have some leads that we're working on, and we also have a person that was arrested in that case who is in custody that, of course, we'll be taking a closer look at. And in the case that happened yesterday, as I mentioned earlier with the camera system, we do have cameras out, and our cameras did take a very clear picture of the vehicle. It is a silver Toyota Camry. The problem in this case, as he noted, is that it had dealer plates on it, didn't have a numerical plate on it, so we don't have a lead to work from that angle. But I'm going to take a second to expand on that. As the sheriff mentioned, with our fantastic crime lab, we do have some scientific evidence that we'll be following up on. And I'd like to remind any would-be criminals out there that this is the wrong place to come. We are going to dedicate our efforts and resources towards putting both of those cases together and bring those people to justice as fast as possible. We have some excellent people in the crime lab that will be working for us extra to put some effort into that. And of course, our detectives are very, very good at what they do, and we will be able to put a case together. The vehicle is, the picture that you noted, it is a very clear picture, and that's courtesy of the camera system that I referenced that we put up in November. Our problem in this particular case, of course, is that it's a silver Toyota Camry. And I think now when you drive home on the freeway, you'll probably see 10 of them on the way home. So it's not as good of a lead as I would want it to be, but at least it's something that we're working on. So I appreciate the question about that. Just know that we are putting our resources, that of the police department and our help at the sheriff's office, to do everything we can to solve that case. And I'm going to take just a moment while I have the microphone to remind everybody in the audience, we do have some of our friends from the police department in the back, so when you have questions, both of my school resource officers from both Monte Vista High School and San Ramon High are in the back. Feel free to ask them anything that you'd like. My weekend supervisor is back there with a big smile on his face, and so is one of my patrol officers. They're happy to talk to you guys about anything you'd like. And I know Officer Niebeck and her canine Ike are here. They'll be back shortly, and please feel free to ask them any questions as well. We appreciate your support.
I've got a question related to the incident that took place yesterday and about 2 weeks ago. More on the proactiveness. I know, thank you for everything that you've done in our community and the license plate recognition and trying to be proactive with the cameras and catching. I'm concerned with the escalation of the violent activity that took place yesterday, that they seem to be ramping it up. Is there anything that we're doing or we can do to be proactive into deterring that activity and possibly adding more presence, a police force or police presence in the community where there's retail for our community? Because as you know, Costco is just one area that there's residents right behind it. And you've got the Iron Horse Trail with people around that. And so I've got a huge concern on allowing the activity to escalate.
Thank you for the question. I appreciate that. And I can assure you that I share that same concern. It's obvious that the crime is escalating. The first time was with a hammer, this time was with a firearm. And that's a frightening case in any community. And I can assure you that part of our strategy is both crime prevention and to increase our patrol in the area. We left an officer on site last night until after closing time, and we're going to continue to add extra patrols in the area. I know that Costco is also working very hard as well, and there's clearly some crime prevention strategies that we can put to play. I had a nice discussion with the general manager down there yesterday, and I know he shares the same concern that you do, and we're working together as a partnership to make sure that we can do everything we can to A, prevent another one from it happening, and B, make sure that the people that did the last two are held accountable for what they did.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there more questions?
I have one. I'm concerned about the interaction between bicyclists and autos. I live in Greenbrook. I come up Greenbrook Drive almost on a daily basis. They have stop signs, we don't. I've got to the routine where I actually almost come to a dead stop every time because those bicyclists come through there so fast. I've had one come through there so fast, by the time he triggered the light, I was in the intersection and he slammed on his brakes his butt came up on his bike at a 90-degree or 45-degree angle to stop himself, and then he yelled at me. But I see no enforcement being taken place for bicyclists who just run stop signs. I come to that three-way controlled stop sign intersection. I won't go out when they're coming down Greenbrook for fear that they're not gonna stop. And, you know, 3,000-pound vehicle and a 300-pound bike and bicyclist don't match well. What can we do about that to enforce that? San Ramon Valley Boulevard on a weekend. Greenbrook Drive, at the light there, they don't stop, they just blow right through it.
I can tell you that I share your concern and I agree with your equation. Those factors aren't gonna work out well for the bicyclist. So, to be clear, what we're doing is we've always tried very hard to work with the bicycle groups in town from an education perspective. And you may not have seen specifically one of our officers pulling over bicyclists, but I can assure you that those tickets get issued because you've never met a human being more mad than a bicyclist who gets a ticket. You know, tickets are something that nobody enjoys getting, but boy, the bicyclists really lose their mind when we give them tickets. And we have and we do, and I can assure you that we're doing that. The other part to this too is a lot of that area that you're referencing is East Bay Regional Parks property. And part of this, the good news here is, you know, like the sheriff lives in Danville and the fire chief says he lives in kind of Danville. I'm not sure where that location is, but the East Bay Regional Parks chief lives in Danville. And we have a very good working relationship with East Bay Regional Parks, and it's something that is always on our radar. You know, I apologize that you haven't seen it specifically occur, but I can assure you that we are issuing those citations, and we're working from both an education and an enforcement perspective. And it never ceases to blow my mind when I see bicyclists who just don't understand the law, and apparently, as you noted, they don't understand the law of physics either, because there's going to be a deadly outcome to that. And I can tell you to the point where, you know, I don't ride a bike, but I jog through town frequently, and I had a bicyclist almost run me over in a crosswalk because they're not paying attention to the rules. And, you know, it is something that we are working on, I can promise you that.
Let me, if I might address the kind of comment. Is that okay? Yeah, is this on? Okay, good. Yeah, no, we, just as the chief knows, he's giving me the business, which he should, because I talked about his dancing. If you saw it, it's terrible. But no, we have.
You didn't mention my dancing.
No, you did great. So the Meyer family has a home that we're remodeling, and we're not quite here yet. It's going through remodel, so I'm going to be a proud official Danville resident, but I am the taxpayer. How about that? Very good. So do your job.
Hi, I'm Sally Taylor, and I had a thought regarding intersections like the one at Railroad. It seems like I've seen a lot of parents grab their kids, and there are a lot of people that don't make real stops at little intersections throughout town, so I'm wondering if there's anything we could do about that.
I can assure you, again, you know, traffic safety is something that we focus on heavily here. We have a supervisor who's assigned to our traffic unit. His name is Andy Jensen. We work with a philosophy of 3 E's, education, engineering, and enforcement. We have some folks in our town transportation department that we work frequently with to address traffic problems. And we have our motorcycle officers out there. A lot of people will come to me and say, you know, hey, I see this, I see that, I see a lot of things. And then I go out in my marked police car with the pretty lights on top, and I don't see anything because everybody's acting angelic as I'm driving through. So we do have our motorcycle officers who can be a little bit more subtle and off the radar, and we put them all over the place. And we work for specific intersections, problems, things that are brought to our attention, and we also work proactively. All the accidents that occur in town have something that's called a primary collision factor. And our officers, whatever that primary collision factor is, if it's speeding or cell phone use or something else like that, our supervisor assigns them to enforce those primary collision factors to make sure that there's a bit more strategy to what we're doing as opposed to just random enforcement. So you may be seeing some problems out there, and I appreciate you bringing that to our attention, and we'll put it on the radar, so to speak, but our motorcycle officers are performing that type of enforcement. We have written a number of crosswalk citations, and things along those lines, that we're trying to do everything we can for pedestrian safety, but there's also, we're not just the 1E in that category. We are definitely the enforcement wing, but we like to work with engineering to better design some of the intersections if at all possible, and then the education side is important too. We don't just want to issue tickets. But thank you for the question.
So with that, I'd like to take a moment to say that we'll be here afterwards as well to answer any questions. I'd also like to introduce another council member of ours that came in. She was at actually the Neff Cure Walk this morning, and that is Council Member Karen Stepper and her granddaughter. Our other council members, Robert Storr is actually watching his son receive his master's degree today in civil engineering. He was not able to be here, as well as Newell Ardenrich is not here today as well. So I'd like to leave you with just a quote, if I may, because as you might know, today is Armed Forces Day. So how appropriate that we all meet here today for this. The quote is from Sidney Sheldon. "My heroes are those who risk their lives every day to protect our world and make it a better place. The police, the firefighters, and members of our armed forces. Gentlemen, you are our heroes." Thank you so much for being here. I'd also like to take this opportunity to let you know that the K9 Ike is here. We have still a lot of refreshments in the back of the room, and as the gentlemen have also alluded to, make sure that you stop by our tables and pick up the valuable information that has been given to you today. Thank you so much for being here, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Yes, Barbara?
I'd like to make one statement as a resident of Danville. I assume that most all of us here live in Danville. We're the lucky ones that we have you and you and you, not only living here but working for us. And I am so proud of every one of you. And I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and we look forward to speaking with you after as well as talking to you. Thank you so much.